Good evening, my friends. I would like to dedicate this lecture to the memory of my uncle, Rabbi Avraham Benhaim, whose month is this week. We discussed last week the first part of this lecture regarding Shabbat. And we called it Shabbat is the day of many lights, which means many gains and benefits. And we even enumerated a few which amounted to approximately 15, something like this. And we discussed only two benefits. We discussed the first benefit, that Shabbat provides mechila, forgiveness, if you remember. Today, my friends, is Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And Rosh Chodesh Nisan is very important and elevated above all the other months, including the month of Tishrei. Even though the month of Tishrei is by itself a very important month, because it's the month when we have Rosh Hashanah, that's the beginning of the new year. Also, according to one opinion, the Tishrei, the first of Tishrei, was the time when God created the world, as we say in Rosh Hashanah, Hayom Harat Olam. But there is another opinion that says that in fact the world was created on the 1st of Nisan. But regardless of that, the month of Nisan is declared in the Torah as Rosh Chodashim. Like it says in Parashat Bo, in the book of Shemot, it says, HaChodesh hazeh lachem, referring to Nisan, of course, HaChodesh hazeh lachem Rosh Chodashim, Rishon hu lachem lechodshei hashana. This is the first month of all the months of the year. It should always be regarded as the first of the month. Indeed, in the Hebrew calendar, the first month of the year is Nisan. Even though the month of Tishrei, which is the 6th month of the year, that's what is called Rosh Hashanah. Now that's very mysterious, that's very odd. That on one hand, Nisan is the first of the year, the first month of the year, whereas the beginning of the year is in fact 6 months later. The reasons behind that is quite complex, but our sages said that Rosh Chodesh Nisan is also a Rosh Hashanah. It's not only Rosh Hashanah. In fact, the Mishnah in Masechet Rosh Hashanah enumerates 4 kinds of Rosh Hashanah in the Jewish year. We have 4 Rosh Hashanah. The first Rosh Hashanah is today. Only it's not for everyone, it's Rosh Hashanah Lamlachim. It's for the kings of Israel. In other words, you start counting the years according to when the king, like for example, Bishnat Amot HaMelech Uziyahu, when you start counting according the year according to the time, to the very few years that since that or this king became the king of Israel. And Nisan is in fact, it's known as Rosh Hashanah for the Melachim, for the kings, because the Hebrew calendar begins indeed with Nisan, does not begin with Tishrei. But there is much more into that. And you will see how I connect it to Shabbat. In fact, it says in the books of Kabbalah that the month of Nisan is so important that every day of the month of Nisan is considered like Rosh Chodesh. Not only today is Rosh Chodesh, but since the Torah calls it Rosh Chodashim, the head of all the months, Therefore, every day of the month of Nisan is considered like Rosh Chodesh. In which way? You know that from the first of the month of Nisan till the end of the month of Nisan, for example, in the prayer, we don't say Tachanun, we don't say the Vidui, we don't say all the things that usually we say every day, except on holidays and Shabbat and Rosh Chodesh. So you see that the month of Nisan from the beginning till the end. Why is it so? I will explain to you very quickly. You have the first 12 days of Nisan, which are considered like a holiday. Why? In biblical times, you know that we had 12 tribes. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Issachar, Zevulun. Each tribe had a prince. It's called in Hebrew, Nasi. Even though today Nasi means a president, but in the Torah, in the vernacular of the Torah, Nasi means the prince. So every tribe had a prince. Shalumiel ben Tzuri Shaddai, and other names that we count in the Torah, that we read in the Torah in Parashat Naso, in the book of Bamidbar. What happened? On the first of Nisan, the Mishkan, you know what is Mishkan? Like the Bet HaMikdash, the first Bet HaMikdash, not in a building, that we call the tabernacle, that was built by Moshe. When the Jewish people were still in the desert, they carried it with them throughout 4 years of wilderness. When they reached the state of the country of Israel, then it was still with them for a few hundreds of years. In fact, it's known as Mishkan Shiloh. After they went into the land of Israel, for 385 years they still had the Mishkan. And that Mishkan was built by Moshe, according to the instructions of Moshe, and built by Betzalel. The inauguration of that Mishkan, which we read last week's parasha, we read in Vayakhel with everything, all the details regarding the Mishkan, how it was built, what it required, the gold, the silver, the copper, and all the details regarding the building of the Mishkan. It was inaugurated on the first day of Nisan, Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So we know that that's one reason why the month of Nisan becomes an important month, because that was the day when the Mishkan, the tabernacle, was inaugurated. But that was not the whole story, because 12 tribes, 12 princes, each one of them brought at its respective day of the first 12 days of Nisan a korban, a sacrifice. He brought a sacrifice. When he brought a sacrifice that is respective to him for his tribe, in order to celebrate the inauguration of the Mishkan, so he made a big party. It was a big party. So every day, for the first 12 days of the month of Nisan, every day was a celebration. Organized by whom? By the prince of that tribe, whether it is Reuven or Shimon or Levi or Yehuda, and so forth. So for 12 days, 12 princes, 12 celebrations. So first you have the first 12 days of Nisan that are covered by days of happiness and celebration, and therefore no Tachanun. Tachanun is those additional prayers that where we do the Vidui and Vaya'avor, Hashem al Panav Vayikra, Hashem, and Nefilat Apayim. When those who used to pray every day, they know what I am talking about. So for 12 days, this is omitted. So you have at least about 7 to 10 minutes that is saved, that we don't have to say those days. Then the 13th day was the lighting of the menorah after the inauguration of the Mishkan, and also it's considered like an Isru Chag. You know that always the day that follows any holiday has no Tachanun also. We don't recite those prayers that we call Tachanun, because it's like a holiday. That's an extension of the holiday. That's why we call it Isru Chag. It's an extension. So therefore always the day after the holiday is also a day which is like a holiday without tachanun. And therefore, since we had 12 days of celebration, of like holidays by themselves, so you have the 13th day of Nisan, which is Isru Chag, which is an extension of the holidays of the princes. So that's another day without tachanun. And then the 14th day of Nisan. What's the 14th day of Nisan? That's Erev Pesach. And Erev Pesach, every eve of a holiday has no tachanun. It's considered already like a pre-holiday. Especially the one that pertains to Pesach. Because the one that pertains to Pesach on the 14th day of Nisan was a tremendous day by the Jewish people, because they had to bring the Korban Pesach, the Paschal lamb, which by itself was a tremendous holiday, a tremendous celebration in which every family partook in eating the Korban Pesach. In fact, every Jew was under the tremendous obligation to bring Korban Pesach in Yerushalayim and to eat it there in Chabura, in groups. And only the people who were contaminated by touching the dead were not allowed to participate in this great mitzvah of the Paschal Lamb. However, they were given a tremendous privilege that exactly 1 month later, on the 14th of Iyar, all those who were not pure, right, because they were contaminated, because they came in touch with a dead dead corpse or something, they were given that day, which is the 14th of Iyar. If you know that the 14th of Iyar is considered like Pesach Sheni, the second Pesach. We have the tradition to eat matzah in it, but that's 1 month exactly after Pesach. So you see that the 14th of Nisan itself was a tremendous holiday by itself, so there is no tachanun anyway, and besides the fact that it is also the eve of a holiday. And then you have 7 days of the holiday of Pesach, right? Of course, in America and anywhere outside Israel, it's 8 days, right? So you have already 8 or 7 days in Israel without tachanun, so it's a holiday. You understand? 7 days of the holiday or 8 days of the holiday. That takes care of another 8 days. Now you are on the 23rd of Nisan. So what's happening now in the last 7 days of the month of Nisan? Also, we don't do any tachanun. And I'm going to give you 2 reasons why we don't say tachanun. Tachanun, again, those are the supplications that we say, that we recite in the prayers after the silent prayer every day, except if it is a Rosh Chodesh or a Shabbat or a holiday, that we don't say tachanun. It's called tachanun. In English, it means supplication. That's when we beg Hashem to forgive us. Ashamnu, bagadnu, that's the confession. All right? Those days, nothing of the kind. I will tell you also what other things we have the tradition to do or not to do during the month of Nisan. But first we have to refer now to the last 7 days. The last 7 days of the month of Nisan are also very special days. In the time of King Solomon, you know that King Solomon is the one who built the first Bet HaMikdash, the building of the first sanctuary. It was after 385 years of the tabernacle of Shiloh, which was the tabernacle of God was in a place that is not built. The structure was not a strong structure, but it was kept in a big tent. That's the Mishkan of Shiloh, and it lasted for 385 years. But immediately after a while after that, King Solomon built, of course, the Bet HaMikdash, the first Bet HaMikdash. Now, when was it inaugurated? The inauguration of Bet HaMikdash was supposed to be during the holiday of Pesach, but they didn't want to do it in the holiday of Pesach, because there is another rule in halakha that we call En me'arrevim simcha besimcha. We do not mix one joy with another joy. You know, for example, let me give you an example. You know that we are not allowed to get married in a holiday. Are we allowed to get married on Shabbat? You cannot. You cannot get married on Pesach. For 7 days or 8 days you cannot get married. Why? Because if you get married during these days, you are going to forget about the happiness of the holiday. And our sages said, En me'arrevim simcha besimcha. We do not mix 2 kinds of happiness. So therefore, even though there was a great happiness when the inauguration, when the building of Beit HaMikdash of King Solomon was finished, was concluded, they had to wait till the end of Pesach in order to start with 7 days of celebrations all over Israel for the building of Beit HaMikdash that finally was inaugurated. You understand? Those are another 7 days at the end of Nisan, which we also celebrate because it was the time when Beit HaMikdash was built. But that's not the only reason. The reason that the Bet Yosef, Maran Rabbi Yosef Karo brings in the Bet Yosef, in his very big book on the Tur, he says that there is a rule that whenever the majority of the month goes without supplication, without tachanun, then the rest, the last days of the month are also without tachanun. So this is the month that becomes extremely special, because from the very first day of Nisan till the very last day of Nisan, the whole Nisan is considered like a holiday. All the month of Nisan, no tachanun, number one. Number two, we don't say hesped. If somebody dies, we don't say eulogy, except if he is a big rabbi of reputation, of great scholarship. Then you are allowed to give the eulogy for him, because eulogies will make people cry, and we are not allowed to cry in a time of holiday or in a happy day. So therefore, in the month of Nisan, no hesped, no eulogies, also no fasts, no ta'anit. But we say if you have let's say if you have a bad dream, and today we don't consider that much bad dreams, but usually if you have a bad dream, then it's not omitted. You have to fast. You want to fast to neutralize it. The best way to neutralize a bad dream is by fasting the next day. When you fast, so even if it is in Nisan, it's okay, because I tell you the truth, even on Shabbat we do it. Only if you do it on Shabbat, you have to fast again another day after Shabbat. Don't repeat this, because people would not understand that today in our times. So you see that the month of Nisan, also on Shabbat of Mincha, we don't say Tzidkatecha. So there are several traditions that we have in the month of Nisan that bring about the picture of Nisan as a full month of celebrations and happiness and joy and holidays.
What fast of newborn? Fast of newborn before.
Very good. That's the only exception. The only exception of people who fast are the firstborn on the 14th of Nisan. And why is that? Because Hashem, when he went during the 10th plague, the plague of Makkat Bechorot of the firstborn, when he destroyed every firstborn Egyptian firstborn, he had to pass over the houses of the Jews. And that's something that must give us a certain type of reflection. In other words, Jews should say, well, thank God I was saved, but I should also feel that I owe something. Every firstborn of the Egyptian died, and the firstborn of the Jew did not. So the firstborn of the Jew feels that he owes a debt, he's indebted to God, and therefore, in order to show that there is a certain value to the fact that he himself was saved, it's like if he is bringing a sacrifice of his own, of fasting on the 14th of Nisan, which is the eve of Passover. Today, what do we do in order to avoid this fast for every firstborn? Because not only the firstborn is under the obligation to fast. If you have a son who is still small and they cannot fast, his father should fast for him, even if he is not a firstborn. You know that. If you have a son that is a firstborn, he's a baby, he doesn't fast, right? But he is a firstborn. So you, the father, even though you are not a firstborn, you still have to fast for him. But there is a way how to avoid the fast. If you don't like to fast, there is a way how to omit that. How? By participating in a joyous occasion of mitzvah. Let's say you go to a Brit Milah. If someone has Brit Milah, circumcision, you go there, you listen to the Brit Milah, you partake in the Seudah, there's no problem. This way, you compensate for the fast of that day. Usually when we have no Brit Milah and there is nothing else that will compensate for that, there are always a few Jews who take upon themselves to finish one full volume of the Talmud. That, like, for example, take Masechet Brachot. They would start learning it, let's say 3 months before the eve of Pesach, and they would leave the ending, the conclusion of that tractate on the eve of Pesach. This way they will do a siyum. A siyum means the ending, the conclusion of the learning of one full Masechet, which me and my son, we always do it as a service to the people, and anybody who is a firstborn could come. We offer also a few cookies and few things. This way, by eating the cookie, you are already automatically, you are absolved with the obligation of fasting. So if you are a firstborn, I would invite you, or I'm sure that Rabbi Nasirov also does it here, as a service for every firstborn on the 14th of Nisan. This way you don't have to fast, because by participating in a celebration of the conclusion of one tractate of the Talmud is equivalent to like a circumcision or a bar mitzvah or anything, and it's called Seudat Mitzvah, and therefore by participating in it, you become exempt from the fasting, from having to fast on the eve of Passover. You understand this? But if you don't participate in any of the happy occasions as we have cited, you have to fast if you are a firstborn. Or if you have a baby that is a baby born, a firstborn, then you have to fast for him. You understand that? It's not easy, especially that if you have to fast, and the first thing you do in the evening is not eating, but rather drinking several cups of wine on an empty stomach. That's not easy. So therefore, always there is a possibility to be exempt by doing what we said before. Why did I bring all this? Number one, it's important. The month of the Rosh Chodesh Nisan is definitely worthy of mentioning, at least as far as its important things. And one has to regard every day of the month of Nisan like a Rosh Chodesh, mamash. So therefore, this is a time of happiness for the Jewish people. It's also the prelude to the great redemption of the Jewish people from Egypt. And apparently our sages said something that is phenomenal. Benisan nig'alu avotenu mimitzrayim, ubenisan atidim ligael. Our sages said, on Nisan, the redemption of the Jewish people from Egypt happened, and the last redemption of the Jewish people, the future redemption, will be also on Nisan. So if we expect any redemption, we should expect it in the month of Nisan.
Next 10 days.
Huh?
In the next 10 days.
Not only beginning today, which means if he didn't come today, you have to believe that he will come tomorrow. If he doesn't come tomorrow, you have to believe that the next day. Should never give up on believing on his coming, on the coming of the Mashiach, because that's what we sing, by the way. Ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin. באמונה שלמה בביאת המשיח בביאת המשיח אני מאמין. ואף על פי שיתמהמה עם כל זה אחכה לו. And even if he is late, nevertheless I shall wait for him. Why do you think the Jewish people had the patience to wait for the Mashiach for the last 2,000 years and more? Amazing. The Jewish people is amazing. I mean, see America today. Ibki aleha bechi, like the Gashash Haidar said. Pity for America. America is going the wrong way. I'm sorry for such a beautiful country that God blessed, and now who knows what will be. One thing I can assure you, the Jewish people has nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry. Of course, rough days, possible. Scary days, yes, possible. Days of anxiety, maybe. For some people, even agonizing. But to reach any kind of destruction, chas v'shalom, have no fear at all. Have fear for America and the rest of the world, that's true. Let's hope for the best for all the world. Today it has been movemented in Jerusalem. And why not? Since now they see that America is going on the side of the Palestinians, that invigorates them to do even more. And that's the big mistake of America. But I'll tell you the truth, the Jewish people must pay a little for electing that one who was not supposed to be elected. That's only my personal opinion. If you have any different opinion, then only watch what's going on and see if we are right or not. Now, we said that the Rosh Chodesh Nisan is a Rosh Hashanah Lamlachim. It's a Rosh Hashanah for the kings. So we said that in the Talmud, in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, it begins by citing 4 kinds of New Years that we have in the year. The first one is today. That's a Rosh Hashanah Lamlachim for the kings of Israel. The second Rosh Hashanah, of course. Do you know that there is a second Rosh Hashanah? We just had one. To Bishbat. Rosh Hashanah La'ilanot, the 15th of Shvat, according to Bet Hillel, or according to Bet Shammai, the 1st of Shvat. But the halacha is we follow Bet Hillel, that's why we celebrate the 15th of Shvat with the fruits and everything. That's Rosh Hashanah for the trees. And then we have a third Rosh Hashanah. Anybody knows what is the third? The third Rosh Hashanah is Rosh Chodesh Elul. That's called Rosh Hashanah for the Ma'asrot, for giving the tithes. You know that the Jews are supposed to give always 10% of their crops, of their animals, cattle, and so forth in all times, and today to a certain degree to some form of tzedakah. But that is considered Rosh Chodesh Elul, Rosh Hashanah for Ma'asrot, beginning of the year of the Ma'asrot. But then followed, of course, by the big Rosh Hashanah, which everybody knows, on the 1st of Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah Leyom Ad-Din. That's the day of judgment. But again, coming back to Nisan, the month of Nisan, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, is Rosh Hashanah for whom? For the Melachim. Melachim means the kings. Now, this is something that people don't understand. What is the kings? Do we have kings today? We don't have kings. So what kind of Rosh Hashanah is it? Well, if you want to accept what I am going to tell you, good. That's one of the benefits of Shabbat. We are going now into the third benefit of Shabbat. Shabbat is known as the Queen Shabbat. For whom? To whom was it given? Hashem gave the day of Shabbat to the Jewish people. He did not give it to any other nation. Our sages said, Goy sheshavat chayav mita. A Goy is not at liberty to keep Shabbat. If he says, I want to keep Shabbat like the Jews, the penalty is, philosophically talking, death. In other words, this is only serious as far as its philosophy, which means it's not yours. Why should you take a gift that is not yours? This is a gift that is exclusively given to the Jewish people. Like the Talmud says, and the Midrash says, that Hashem, when He wanted to give Shabbat to the Jewish people, He said to Moshe, Moshe, Matana achat yesh li bevet genazai veShabbat shma. I have in my treasury chest a wonderful gift that we call Shabbat. I want to give it to them, to my children. Lech vehodiam, go and tell them. So we understand that the Shabbat is a gift, but He gives it to nobody but the Jewish people. Shabbat is known as Malka, Shabbat Malketa. It's a queen, Shabbat. And let me just tell you a little midrash to understand what I am saying here. Hashem gave the Shabbat to no other nation but the Jewish people. And what is the Jewish people? Again, please do not judge me as a presumptuous fellow. I am proud to be a Jew, yes. And Jews must be proud to be Jews. And you know why? Because we are not anyone. We are kings. The Torah tells us that God proclaimed us to be a nation of kings. Ve'atem tihiyu li bnei melachim ve'goy kadosh. We are a nation of kings, of princes. And that's why Shabbat is a gift that was given to us. A queen to the king. Every Jewish Shabbat, every Jewish house in which Shabbat is observed is a house of kings, of royalty. And Hashem gave Shabbat to the nation of kings. I did tell you once a little story that happened between Ben Gurion and the President of America, Eisenhower. When Ben Gurion, the first Prime Minister of Israel, became the Prime Minister of Israel, I think it was in 1948, something like this. So he came to seek help from America. So he came to President Eisenhower and he said to him, "You have to help us, we have nothing." And the President said to him, "How many people, how many your population counts?" He says, 2 million Jews. He says, "You're complaining about 2 million Jews? Come and see me," he says to him. "I have 200 million people in my country. That's something difficult to handle, but 2 million people." So Ben Gurion's famous answer was to the President of America, he said, "Mr. President, you're right. You are the president of 200 million people. But I am the Prime Minister of 2 million kings. What do you do with 2 million kings? It's not easy. A king is not like anybody." I'm sure the President did not regard this with any... He's a smart man, so therefore he regarded this with sympathy and a certain gesture of acquiescence, which means he nodded, saying, "You're right." Because the Goyim, they know that. In fact, when we recite at the Torah, "Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato," when we say that God chose us, so we are known as the chosen nation. As I have mentioned many times, you will find rarely Jews who will say about themselves that they were chosen, but you will find many Goyim who refer to us as the chosen nation. Most of the time with a certain irony behind it, which means to give them an excuse to hate us even more. But I tell you the truth, it's not difficult really to understand that we are a nation of kings. From what you will understand that we are a nation of kings? Just watch how the world treats us. Watch how the world refers to us. I mean, let's just take the case of today. America now, I'm not saying that she is siding totally with the Palestinians, but it has been rough the last week. Mrs. Clinton, the way she addressed, how could they change so quickly? So a few months ago she said, "Oh boy, there's nobody should say anything again. We defend the Jewish state with our life." And today she says different things completely. That we have disappointed America, that we have a lot at stake. What do you mean you have a lot at stake? And do you think for the Jewish people it is easy to make hundreds of thousands of Jews relocate again? Go to exile again? Since when? And besides, to whom? To give it to whom? I don't want to sound redundant again on this subject, but the idea is very clear. Today America is going a bad way against us. I hope to God that America will realize the mistake and will recover from that soon. But right now, what do you see? We have been massacred, we have been persecuted, we have suffered. The world hates us, no end. The world tried to exterminate us. They did not succeed. They did not succeed to exterminate us. The more they try to exterminate us, the more we grow. Like it says in the Torah, the more they make us suffer, the more we grow. And like it happened after the Holocaust, everybody thought it's the end of the Jews. But such a revival we never saw for the last 2,000 years. Not only we have a country, the country of Israel, but you should go and see how it is built, and so many yeshivot, and so much Torah, and Baruch Hashem, the Jewish world is flourishing after the Holocaust like it never did for the last 2,000 years, since the destruction of the temple. But the fact that the world is referring to us with such distinction, I mean, everything is against us, that makes us very special. That shows that the fact that if we are known to be a chosen nation, it's not for our fault. It's the Goyim who made us chosen, the truth. If you want to look at it in a certain way, how is in politics, you will see that the world really refers to us as very special. If we were not special, why do they talk so much about us? Why do they pay attention to every single gesticulation of the Jew? As soon as you do something to the Palestinians, they can massacre themselves. They can kill every day there is a suicide bombing that killed them. Nobody is referring to them. Maximum a little mentioning on the radio. But once the Jew does something, the whole world is in turmoil. And why? For something. We did everything, and we did more than any other nation has done. And yet it doesn't seem to be enough for the world. The world is dying to see us finished. Unfortunately, even the good ones, America. That's their intention. Hopefully not all of them. What can I say? But the truth is that how can you hide such a thing? But in the meantime, I'll tell you something that is written in the books. The more they hate us, of course we have to try to behave the best we can. Jews are under the obligation to be the best in behavior, in elegant behavior, in nobility, by helping, like Israel does with the Palestinians. Where did you see a nation that is so harassed by its neighbors, and yet the same country that is harassed is a source of supply and support? There is none like it in the world. They help Hamas. They transfer monies, millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. To whom? To our arch enemy, Hamas. They give them. Why? Because it's honest. Belongs to them. It's theirs. What are you doing, Ribbon Shalom? At least keep the money. No, it's theirs. That's the Jew. Being like this, that's being a king. Only a king can do those things. Watch what they did in Haiti just a few weeks ago. It has been reported, but not enough though. But it has been reported what the Israeli group has done there. It's unbelievable. Jews are always willing to help. Jews must be always willing to help. Somebody asked me yesterday, should I give tzedakah in the subway to someone? I said, of course you have to give tzedakah. It's a mitzvah to give tzedakah to the goy. It's a great mitzvah to give the tzedakah to the goy. Why? It's not that because you are helping. It's because you are mekadesh et Hashem. You are sanctifying the name of God. When they see that's a Jew. And as our sages said, ve'ahavta et Hashem elokecha sheyehe shem shamayim mitahev al yadcha. Every Jew is under the obligation to make the world always say good about him. And to say, you see, the Jew is a good man. And therefore his religion is a good religion. I'll tell you the truth. Every guy says that in his heart. Only it's hard for them to say it. Why? Because it's a conflict between them and their own natural hatred that they have towards us. They are not so much to blame, because that hatred was created by God himself to keep us apart. That's the reason why there is such hatred. Otherwise, I challenge anyone to come and explain to me how come we are hated so much. Why? Since when did you see? Watch the world. The Jew is always tranquil, is always nice. Does not go take arms and kill people. Does not murder. Does not steal. I'm not talking about the exceptions, but the truth is that that's the way it is, and that's the way everybody knows it is. That's the point. Only we are special. When you are special, you pay the price. We are special. You asked me questions about ta'anit, about certain things, and then I said, what do you think? To be a Jew is easy? To be a Jew is not easy. And why it's not easy? To be a king also is not easy. But to be a king is easy. Many people relinquish the right to be a king, because to be a king is really a big problem. It's a responsibility and everything. To be a Jew is a great responsibility. Don't you think that Jews who go in the street, they should think that they are like anybody? Even the way they walk should be special. Even the way they talk, they should be very careful not to use bad language. Jews should be very careful not to use dirty language, because it's detrimental to all the Jews. One Jew does something wrong, the other Jews will suffer. That's the problem that many Jews do not understand. And why is that? Because we are a nation of kings. A king, even when it is hot, he must appear to the world with all his attire. He doesn't go with jeans or with shorts or things like that. Why? Because he is a king. But hey, listen, it's very hot. So, what can he do? He bears his royalty despite the consequences, despite the limitation that he has. And yet, to be a king is to be a king. That's something. And therefore, God gave us Shabbat, because Shabbat is a queen. And it says in the Midrash that one day, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said the following Midrash. And he said that Shabbat one day came to God. And she said to him, Master of the universe, I have no companion. I have no spouse. Every day has the other day to be with him. I mean, Sunday has Monday, and Monday has Tuesday, and Tuesday has Wednesday, and so forth. Because they are all similar, 6 days of the week are similar. Therefore, each one has its companion. But Shabbat says, but I am all alone. Shabbat begins, everybody must agree to that as soon as Shabbat begins, the atmosphere changes. The whole world changes. It's something else. It's a day in which people don't work, don't answer the phone, don't do this, don't do that. And that makes the day of Shabbat special. So Shabbat in the Midrash comes to Hashem. Hashem, I am lonely. So Hashem said to her, to Shabbat, don't worry. I'm going to give you a spouse. And he gave her Israel. Of course, this is an anecdote that has to be regarded with a proper understanding, which means the Jewish people espoused the Shabbat. It's like Shabbat is our wife. That's the only thing that God gave us as a companion. Why? Because Shabbat is a queen, and the Jewish people is a nation of kings. When you keep Shabbat, you bring nobility upon yourself. A Jew who keeps Shabbat properly, with all the particularities of Shabbat, he will have royalty on his face. He is a king. A Jew who behaves like a goy is not a king. Of course, certain distinctions will always remain by the Jew regardless. But a Jew who keeps Shabbat, he has the nobility of Shabbat on his face. And that's the third gift of Shabbat. We said the first gift was forgiveness, the gift of forgiveness. I will not go back to it again because we discussed it at length. The second gift was the bracha, the blessing of Shabbat, as we sing in the song Lechadodi, Ki hi mekor haberacha, the source of all the blessings that we have comes only from Shabbat. If you have parnasa, every day of the week is being blessed by the day of Shabbat. In fact, there is no mazal to any day except from the mazal of Shabbat. Even though Shabbat itself does not provide you with any parnasa because you don't work. Remember, we mentioned this last week, if you remember. So we did mention the Zohar. I quoted from the Zohar HaKadosh, where it says, the question, if you tell me that God blessed Shabbat, so how come Shabbat, the Jewish people in the wilderness did not receive the manna? Remember, 6 days, every day the manna fell down, and that's how they ate. But they were promised that on Friday, the manna will come down in a double portion. Why? Because on Shabbat it will not come. Shabbat, God does not work, so to speak. So the manna didn't come down. So that means there is a certain absence of a good thing on Shabbat. So how come you say that Shabbat is a blessed day, since it does not provide you with food, does not provide you with parnasa? And the answer that the Zohar gave us, it's because Mishum dehahu yoma mitbarchin mineh kol shata kol shita yomin ilain. Because from the day of Shabbat, all the 6 days of the week are being blessed. So even though Shabbat itself does not provide you because you can't work, but at the same time, it has the potential to give you the blessing for each day. So therefore, Shabbat is definitely foreign to us when we work on it, chas v'shalom. Therefore, kol chad beyoma mehahu bracha demitbarchan beyoma shvi'ah. The blessing that we get every day is only from the 7th day. And therefore we know that it is a source of bracha, especially for people who observe Shabbat with tremendous exactitude and meticulously. Those people will see automatically the great bracha, the great blessing of Shabbat day. So that was the second gift of Shabbat. And the third gift we just mentioned, you get royalty. But that is something that will not be easy to explain, except if you keep Shabbat à la lettre, which means, as we have explained last week, it has to be kept in a very, very meticulous way. Then you realize how much royalty the Jew has on his face, in his behavior, in everything, just because of the tremendous shefa that the Shabbat provides. We will go now to number 4. Gift number 4 that we get from Shabbat. I will quote again from the Zohar HaKadosh, because the gift is shalom, peace. That's the gift number 4 that comes from Shabbat. It says in the Zohar HaKadosh, Bereshit Memchet, Tachazeh, come and see. Kad itkadash yoma b'ma'aleh shabbeta. On the eve of Shabbat, Friday, when it's about the time when the day sanctifies itself to be ready to receive Shabbat. See the words of the Zohar? When the day is getting to become purer in order to absorb the coming of Shabbat, Sukkot Shalom Sharia Veit Perisat Be'alma. It's like a hut, like a roof of peace that spreads all over the world when Shabbat comes. I understand that this is figurative and this is something that not everyone will understand. But again, I will repeat again, even if I have to repeat it 1,000,000 times. Those things that can be understood only if you keep Shabbat without exception. Not just let me answer the phone just once. There is no such a thing. Shabbat must be kept meticulously, and that if you do it properly, you will understand more and more what we are telling you, the gifts of Shabbat. So the gift number 4 is Sukkot Shalom, a hut or a tent of peace that spreads all over the world. It perisat be'alma. And remember, that's the blessing that we say Friday night in the prayer. Baruch atah Hashem, הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ואמרו אמן ושמרו בני ישראל. הפורש סוכת שלום. We say a special blessing to God. We say, blessed you are, Hashem, that you spread an umbrella of peace all over the world when Shabbat comes in. How do we see this? It takes a lot of understanding and a lot of feeling to see why on Shabbat there is peace that comes to the air. The world is full with peace. Relaxation, of course you could call it relaxation. You could call it because you stop working. But there is much more into that. There is spirituality involved also. Remember, how do we greet each other on Shabbat, Reuven? By saying Shabbat Shalom. Did you ever ask yourself, why do we say Shabbat Shalom? What Shalom is doing with Shabbat? Well, how come you never asked this question before, Margareta? Why do we say Shabbat Shalom? It's a good question. Why don't you say Shabbat Lev? Shabbat, I don't know. Why Shalom? because the very specific blessing for that, we say every Friday night during the prayer. Baruch Ata Hashem, hapores sukat shalom alenu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'imru amen. Blessed you are, Almighty, who spreads an umbrella of peace above all of us, especially Jews who keep Shabbat. So that's what we can say about the gift of peace on Shabbat. Of course, you could say, in which way we understand the gift of peace? Does that mean peace with our enemies? Shabbat or no Shabbat, we still are in conflict with the world, right? We're talking here about Oseh Shalom bimromav, Hu ya'aseh Shalom alenu, ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. It's a blessing, it's a prayer. Oseh Shalom bimromav, God who makes peace in the heavens. In the heavens you have wars all the time. But God makes peace between the angels. I cannot go any further into this because that's already Kabbalah and we are not so clear about it. But whatever problems we have in the world is as a result of what's going on up there. Let me not go into this because you will ask me precise answers and I don't have them for you. But I want you to know that God is not, He's making all the time busy making peace. Also Shalom bimromav. So we ask Him, as you are doing peace up there, we ask you also to do peace down here. But when it comes Shabbat, there is a certain spiritual peace that invades the spirit of every Jew, especially a Jew who is Shomer Shabbat. As I said here in Hebrew, ulehavin zot bepashtut, to understand this simply, she'avirat Shabbat mashre al mi sheshomra hargashat margoa v'shalom nafshi. There is peace and there is peace. I'm not talking about peace with the nations or peace with our enemies. I'm talking peace within yourself. That's what Shabbat provides you. Every day you are going after things. You have to answer the phone. You have to answer your urge to smoke. You have to open, there is a baseball game. I have to see it, and so forth. But if you are a Shomer Shabbat, you are at peace with everything. Nothing is bothering me. Let the phone scream to the hikes. Let the whatever game is there. Shabbat, I am free of everything. Therefore, there is a certain spiritual relaxation that comes upon an individual who is Shomer Shabbat. And I am saying here, Vedavar muchashihu, it's something that you have to sense. Ve'en tzorech lehasbiro, ella lehargisho. It's something that we cannot explain. It has to be felt. V'dai bazeh. V'lo bichdi. And that's why we say to each other, Shabbat Shalom. Why do we say Shabbat Shalom? Because the gift of Shabbat is Shalom, is a certain peace of mind that is more spiritual than physical, and that's something that is worth millions for anybody who understands. Now, gift number 5, right? We said the first gift is Mechila. The second gift was Bracha, the blessing. The third gift was Malchut, royalty. And the fourth gift was Shalom, peace. And now the fifth gift is Simcha, happiness. People are supposed to be more happy on Shabbat. Now, is it possible that you are supposed to be more happy when you are not happy? Yes, there's such a thing. On Shabbat we are supposed to be more happy. But there is also help from heaven. If you keep Shabbat, Hashem gives you happiness, and extra happiness. It will make you easier for you to be even more happy. We say that in the beginning of Adar, Mishenichnas Adar, Marbim besimcha. When the month of Adar begins, you have to increase your simcha. So now the question is, what is to increase your simcha? How can you increase your simcha? Don't we know that simcha, which means joy, is something that either you have it or not. If you feel happy, you're happy. If you don't feel happy, you're not happy. So how come our sages are telling us, hey, when Adar begins, Marbim besimcha, you have to increase your simcha. It means that joy is in my hands to increase? Well, apparently you shouldn't think that our sages are plain thinkers. They are not stupid. They know what they are saying. And they know that a person definitely is capable. He has the potential in him to increase his happiness. When Shabbat comes, there is an additional help into this that makes you even more happy. If you keep Shabbat. You keep Shabbat, you are going to feel more happiness on Shabbat. Of course, here I am saying it's very easy to understand. Because כי בהיות האדם מסולק מכל עסקיו וטרדותיו, ודאי שתתפנה הנפש מהם והשמחה תשרה. When you are free of all the busy occupations that you have every day, Shabbat comes, you are free of all of them, automatically the nefesh, the soul, is now available for her. There is a space for joy, for additional joy for the soul. Why? Because Shabbat has a taste of royalty. And remember, what do we say again on Friday night? And the Ashkenazim, they sing it this way. Yismechu b'malchutecho shomre Shabbat וקוראי עונג שבת. אתה לא מכיר את זה, אורי? אתה לא אשכנזי? מה זה? אני פעם, I was invited. Did I tell you this story that I was invited in Philadelphia by the Orthodox community of the Ashkenazim to be as a scholar in residence? I was a scholar in residence. They paid me good money to give 3 speeches. I went to Philadelphia, I spent Shabbat there by Ashkenazim. The only problem is that there were many Sephardim who heard that I am coming there, so they came and they joined. So one of them, the president of the Spanish-Portuguese synagogue, so he came to the rabbi there, Rabbi fell there, and he said to him, Rabbi, you know that Rabbi Benhaim knows also how to sing, he sings. So why don't you invite him? Without asking my permission, with nothing, the rabbi got up, and he says, we would like our scholar in residence to give us a nice rendition with to lead us in services. Oh my God, lead them in services? I don't know how to lead the Ashkenazi services. What am I going to do? I had no choice, I had to get up. I said to him, Rabbi, I'm Sephardic. He said, go ahead, do it, even Sephardic. I said, no, I have to give you the Ashkenazi. I cannot bring ridicule on myself. And I started. I knew that this is a makam hijaz in the Ashkenazim. It goes always lo 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 ya ba 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 ya ba ba boy. Ashkenazi ktsat. So I went on that way. It's called the makam. If you know makam, it's a style of music. So if you go on that, you are not lost. So I did it, and they followed me nicely. When I arrived to Yismechu b'malchutcha, which we sing on Shabbat morning during the repetition of the silent prayer, so I had the guts. I couldn't believe it in myself. I had the guts to say Yismechu, and all of them went Yismechu b'malchutecho. After I finished the Shachrit, the rabbi got up and he says, Rabbi Sai, next time when we invite Rabbi Benhaim, it will not be just as a rabbi who will speak. He will come, he will be invited as a chazan. I said to him, thank you very much. Anyway, what do we say? Yismechu b'malchutcha, shomre Shabbat vekor'e oneg. That's everybody who prays on Shabbat knows this. Yismechu b'malchutcha, what is? In that royalty that we call Shabbat, all the shomre Shabbat, all those who keep Shabbat, shall be happy with that royalty. Which means the gift of happiness is given to a person who is a Shomer Shabbat, but again, kehilchata, meticulously, without any exceptions. Ubarur leba'al nefesh. This also is only something that you have to sense, and that cannot be explained. It has to be felt. Ki im be'en lo tzorech behesber, ella behargasha. This has to do with sensing it. If you keep Shabbat 100%, I promise you, you will feel the 5th gift, the gift of happiness, simcha. Now, gift number 6, aura, light, the gift of light. Anyway, the title of this lecture is Shabbat, the day of many lights. So each one of those things that we have mentioned is a light by itself. But now we are talking about specific light. What am I saying? Which means, you see those lights? Very nice. The same lights We don't add any more lights. The same lights that you have here, if you are a Shomer Shabbat with everything in perfection, you are going to enter this place with the same lights, only you will see that the light is much stronger than that. Am I fantasizing, maybe? Is it fantasy? I promise you, my friends, that when I go to my house after I finish the synagogue Friday night and I go home, I see, but my house is much more lighted than the other 6 days. Now, you could always tell me that I'm just inventing things. The truth is that everything has more light on Shabbat. You have more light, Marina, on Shabbat. You don't look on Shabbat like the way you look in the other days. And I mean in lighting, the aspect of life, of light. Hakol me'ir yoter b'Shabbat. Everything, even the walls, have a light on Shabbat. I'll tell you something. It says in the Torah a certain statement that everybody says that in the Kiddush. Vayvarech Elohim et yom ha-shevi'i vaykadesh oto. Everybody knows this pasuk? That's in the Kiddush. What is Vayvarech Elohim? And God blessed the seventh day, vaykadesh oto, and He sanctified it. So our sages say in the Midrash, with what did He bless it? So our sages, Bame beracho. So our sages said, Beracho b'ma'or panim. He gave a special blessing to the day of Shabbat, that everyone on his face has more light. Especially Jews who keep Shabbat. They have more light on their face during Shabbat. That's the sixth gift of Shabbat. I even spoke about this in a certain recording that I did, and I spoke how when I was just a little lad, I used to watch people running to the synagogue on Friday night, and I saw all of them were red. Of course, it's possible because they just took a bath. I'm not saying no, but there is much more than that. Much more than that. And
this reason.
I tell you the truth. I must tell you something, that even the streets, you go outside the street, there is more light. You look up the sky, there is much more light. There is light everywhere. There is light in the face of everyone. The way you look, Reuven, on Shabbat, I don't care how you keep Shabbat or not. I know you keep Shabbat, but I don't care how you keep it, I said. Nevertheless, your face is shining more on Shabbat than any other day. Believe it or not. Hey, listen, this is what our sages said. Bame beracho, beracho be'or panav shel Adam. That's what it says, if you don't believe me, in the Midrash Bereshit Rabbah, Perek Yud Aleph, chapter 11. Same thing also has been said in the Midrash Shir HaShirim regarding a very famous statement that King Solomon said, Shechora ani venava benot Yerushalayim. I am black and beautiful, said the daughters of Yerushalayim. If you read Shir HaShirim, you know that one very much. So our sages said in the Midrash, Shechora, what do you mean black? I am black and beautiful. What is the meaning? Shechora ani venava. Pasuk b'Shir HaShirim. So our sages said, Shechora ani kol yemot hashavua venava ani b'Shabbat. I am black all week, all days of the week, but on Shabbat I am beautiful. Of course, we can understand this very easily, because every day of the week you go to work, so that's considered to be black working. But on Shabbat you don't work, so yeah, if you want you could explain it this way. But as I said, Im yilmad adam lehargish, if one will learn how to feel, how to sense, Veshomer Shabbat keilchata, and he keeps Shabbat meticulously, yizke lirot beishto uvanav bechaverav ushchenav shemeirim beyofyam yoter mishar yamim. If you keep Shabbat properly, and if you teach yourself to feel, you are going to see Your wife has light on her face. Your children have light on their face. Your friends, your neighbors, all of them will have more light that make them much more beautiful than all the other things. You don't believe me? What can I do? I see it. Now you could say maybe I am just having illusions, but that is the truth. At least as far as I am concerned, and I know as far as many of my friends, they say the same thing. You know? Amazing. You go to the synagogue and you see everything is different lights. It's not the same light. It's not the way that's not the way. Even though the same thing, everything is the same. But you mean to tell me that your house, Margareta, looks Friday night like it looks every other night? And that's not only because you cleaned everything. That's not because of that. There is something additional on Shabbat. Anyway, that's all I can say about this. Gift number 7, refu'ah. There is also healing on Shabbat. That's a long story. Well, I will quote a little statement from the Talmud in Masechet Shabbat on page 12. It says, Tanu Rabbanan, hanichnas levaker et hachole b'Shabbat, omer, Shabbat hi miliz'ok urfu'ah krova lavo. If there is somebody sick, and you go to visit him, on Shabbat, you have to say the following words. Shabbat hi miliz'ok. You don't even need to pray on Shabbat, because refu'ah krova lavo. Healing is coming. That's a nice thing to say to somebody who is sick on Shabbat. But you have to understand that those who keep Shabbat properly, it says in the books of Kabbalah, in the book of Meorenaim, in the book of Degel Machane Ephraim, books of Kabbalah, where it says that if one knows how, he can have enough power to practically afilu mimavet lechayim yachol leitrapot. That there is a potential of healing on Shabbat that is incredible, enough to even bring life to somebody who is about to die. Unfortunately, nobody can say that he has the knowledge for that, nor the purity. For this you need tremendous purity, tremendous sanctity, but it's all contained in Shabbat. Shabbat has the potential to bring healing. Now, whether we see it or not, maybe it's beyond us, maybe it's too much, but I want you to believe that the potential of healing is contained in Shabbat. Enough. Now let's go to number 8. Number 8 is called oneg, pleasure. That's number 8, gift number 8. It says in the book of Isaiah, a very famous pasuk by those people who recite the Kiddush of Shabbat during the Saturday, and prior to the little Kiddush that we say Veshameru Bnei Israel, you say a few Pesukim, you quote from the book of Isaiah and say, Im tashiv mi Shabbat raglecha asot chafatzecha biyom kochi v'karata la Shabbat oneg. Maybe not everybody has the tradition to say those things, but it says v'karata la Shabbat oneg. The name of Shabbat is pleasure, is delight. Now those things we can understand. It says in the Talmud in Masechet Shabbat on page 118, Kuf Yud Chet, if you give pleasure to Shabbat, doesn't say if you take pleasure to yourself. So if you give pleasure to Shabbat, Hashem will give you an inheritance without limits. Now this Rabbi Akiva explained in a way that we understand even if you have not much money. But you have only enough money to buy a few sardines. Rabbi Akiva became famous by saying a certain statement that we find in Masechet Psachim and Shabbat. He says, Aseh Shabbat chachol ve'al titztarech labiryot. It's better to have your Shabbat to eat on Shabbat like you eat the other days. You know, small quantity and small things, if you don't have the money, rather than going to beg or to ask from people for a loan. That's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. But the opinion of others said, go ahead and ask a loan, provided you know that you will have the possibility to pay back. If you know that you don't have the possibility, don't do that. But if you have the possibility to pay it back, God says, Levu alai va'ani porea. For Shabbat, we can go ahead and borrow money, and I shall pay for you, God says. Of course, if you understand what it means. It means that Hashem will give you enough bracha to pay back. But the intention must be strictly for the pleasure of Shabbat. So by giving pleasure to the Shabbat, and Rabbi Akiva says, even with small fish you could do it, because it has to do with how you feel. It doesn't have to do only with what you eat. It has to do how you feel regarding Shabbat. You know, there were some tzaddikim who felt a tremendous delight on Shabbat, even by eating a piece of bread. Has to do with... therefore it says in the book of Tehillim, Ve'ita'anneg al Hashem, ve'iten lecha mish'alot libecha. If your pleasure has to do with giving pleasure to God by doing what He wants you to do, He will also give you whatever you need. Ve'iten lecha mish'alot libecha. How do you bring delight into Shabbat? Not difficult. You buy the best fish, the best food, you drink, you eat, you sing. And all this you might be doing it for your own pleasure. But keep inside your conscience a little space for some spirituality. Say, I do it because of Shabbat. Let's say, usually you don't buy caviar, okay? Let's say, but you say, you know what? You see caviar suddenly, oh, a little flask of caviar. I'm going to buy it for Shabbat. And you buy it strictly for Shabbat. Even though you are going to take pleasure in it, but you are considered that you gave pleasure to Shabbat. We find similar story with Hillel and Shammai. Shammai, whenever he saw during the week a nice chicken in the market, he says, oh, what a nice chicken, I'm going to buy it for Shabbat. Let's say it was Monday. But then on Tuesday he went back to the market, he found a better chicken. Oh, this is for Shabbat. He took care of the first one and he left the second. Everything that he did was for Shabbat. Oh, I'm going to buy this, even though really it has to do with his own pleasure. But it's the mind. You guide your mind to think this way. You think, I am doing it for Shabbat. I am making this for Shabbat. I am going to make sure that this window is clean for Shabbat. I'm going to clean this table for Shabbat. You are automatically considered that you are giving pleasure into Shabbat. And you know what will be the result? You are going to feel great pleasure also on Shabbat. And that's the gift number 7. Gift number 8, Kedusha, sanctity.
Sorry, gift number 7, it was...
gift number 8, I'm sorry, that was gift number 8.
Okay.
The pleasure.
The pleasure, okay.
Feeling pleasure. You know, usually people don't know how to define pleasure. They define pleasure in whatever gives them pleasure. You see a nice piece of a nice steak, that's pleasure. Other things that I don't want to mention, they will say it's pleasure. But there is a different kind of pleasure that the soul feels, and that pleasure leaves such an impact of pleasure on the person that once you realize what it is, you will definitely give it priority to the other pleasures. But that requires learning, understanding, learning how to feel, and doing what is required to do. You keep Shabbat properly, you are going to understand more and more. Every time you will understand more and more of the things that we are dealing with, such as pleasure. Tell me what's pleasure. You talk to people, for example, it's going to give you pleasure. But people understand pleasure only in things that they have pleasure. Most of them are even forbidden. So how are you going to explain to him pleasure? So we must tell him, we must tell the world that there is also another kind of pleasure, that the pleasure of the soul. When the soul feels pleasure, then you feel pleasure much greater than the pleasure that people are pursuing. People are pursuing pleasures all the time, but they don't realize that the pleasure of Shabbat, there is no higher pleasure than that. How can I prove it to you? It's impossible to prove it to you. First, you have to teach yourself to learn it. Second, to do it. Third, to sense it. You have to teach yourself to feel those things. And then you will realize that Shabbat is a source of pleasure, no end. But now we learn that gift number 9 is Kedusha. It gives you holiness. Of course, today, anybody who will hear me saying this will tell me, oh, who wants holiness? But it says in the Pasuk, Ki Kodesh hi lachem. Shabbat is Kodesh. And the Mechilta says in Midrash, in Parashat Ki Tisa, Magid she'ashabbat mosefet kedusha al Israel. Shabbat has another great potential. It adds, the Jewish people is holy by itself, religious or not. You understand it or not. You feel it or not. The Jewish people is more holy than all the nations. Okay, I sound presumptuous. Fine. I am proud to be a Jew. Nobody will take grudge on me because of that. I am a Jew. And I believe in the Torah. And I believe in our sages. And I believe in Shabbat. And I believe that if our sages said that Shabbat has the potential to increase our holiness, I believe in it 100%. The only problem is, what should you feel? You know, I will give you just a glimpse into it. What happens when you feel holy? I'm going to tell you the simplest result. The simplest result is that you will not do things that are dirty. When you see something dirty, immediately you awake and see, I am a king. I don't do that. That doesn't mean not to serve or to help people. That's something else. To help a child, or to help a woman, or to help an old man, or an old guy, it doesn't matter who, is a trait of nobility. It has nothing, there's nobody that will discuss this and argue with that. What I am saying is that if you want to know the simplest meaning of what is having yourself being more kadosh than usual, in other words, you feel more holiness. What is to feel more holiness? It means that you don't deign. You know what is to deign? You have, when somebody is proud, he is not going to do things that are very inferior, right? It's considered ga'ava maybe, but that's a kosher ga'ava. So again, when you are holier, the holier you are, the more prone to things that are cleaner. You know? Cleanness, Mesilat Yesharim says, cleanness is holiness. When you are holy, you are going to find it difficult to do things that are not nice. That by itself is a gain that is extraordinary. To go to a place in which it's bad place, you will not go. If you are a holy man, without having to understand it as holiness that we refer when we refer to a tzaddik. I'm talking about holiness that has to do with every Jew. Every Jew is holy. Ki am kadosh ata l'Hashem Elokecha, it says in the Torah. You are a nation of holiness. Or like it says, kedoshim tihiu leLokechem. Right? Or like we say every day in the prayer, ata kadosh, v'shimcha kadosh, continue Reuven. Ukdoshim bechol yom yahalelu chasela. What is ukdoshim? Ata kadosh, you are holy. V'shimcha kadosh, and your name is holy. Ukdoshim bechol yom, and the holy ones will always praise you every day. Who are they? The Jewish people. We are the ones who pray to Hashem 3 times a day, and therefore we are considered to be holy. What is holy? People are afraid to hear that they are holy. I'm not holy. I'm not talking about a holy man from India. I'm not talking about somebody who's fasting day and night. I'm not talking about Moshe Rabbeinu who went up to the mountain of Sinai. I'm just talking about a plain Jew. A Jew is holy. How do we understand this holiness? By the fact that he will not do inferior things. That he will not go to bad places. That he will not look into things that are dirty. By not watching things that are... If you feel holiness in you, it will already help you to restrain yourself from doing things that are inferior. Is it enough what I am saying or not? There's plenty to say about this, but I think the message is very clear. Shabbat, when you keep it meticulously, it gives you an additional amount of holiness, which means it sets you apart from things that are not holy. Do you understand what I am saying here? זה הפירוש של קדוש. בימינו, in our days, the meaning of kadosh is not the end of the world. It's something that you are too proud to do something that is not nice. It's not nice to be drunk, okay? If you are a holy man, except Yom Purim, well, that's it. Once you have a good intention, it's fine. Everything is okay when you have a good intention, because it's the mind that makes the decision. So anyway, being kadosh means that you have the potential to survive a challenge against something that is bad. That's all. You will not venture in places that are not nice if you are a holy man. If you have holiness in you, that has to do with royalty, that has to do with nobility, that has to do with cleanness, that has to do with a good mind. That's me being holy. That's kadosh. ובהיות האדם שורה בקדושה ורוחה עופפת אותו, טבעי הוא שירגיש רחוק מן החטא. Did you understand? Once you are in the stage of holiness, it will be easy for you to separate from sin. Number 10. We still have about 5 minutes. I'll make it very quickly. משכיחה כל צער ודאגה. Shabbat has the potential to make you forget anxiety, pain, and worriness. All this, if you keep Shabbat properly, you are going. Let's say you owe money, and now your mind is taken by this no end. If you are Shomer Shabbat, really 100%, Shabbat comes, on Shabbat you are not worried at all. And the result is easy. Because you could be a poor man. A poor man that has nothing. But he has no anxiety. He's better than the rich man with anxiety. Am I correct or not? Again, a poor man. He has nothing. But he's not worried. And he has no anxiety. Isn't he better than the richest man who is full of anxiety every day? There's no question about it. So that's why our sages said, Ezeu Ashir, Hasameach Bechelko, who is the true rich man? He's the person who is happy with his lot. If he has no anxiety, then automatically he's the richest man. Shabbat has the potential to remove your anxiety. If we don't succeed to remove our anxieties on Shabbat, it means we are not 100% Shomer Shabbat. And by the way, who can say that he is 100% Shomer Shabbat? Our sages said, as I said last week, to be Shomer Shabbat 100%, you need to study all your life the laws of Shabbat. Kahararim atluyim besa'ara. The laws of Shabbat are like mountains hanging in the air, on a hair. So nobody can say, I am 100% Shomer Shabbat. I'm talking about according to our level. That's all. According to our level. But there is a higher level. And if we are capable of reaching the highest level of keeping Shabbat, you get all those benefits that we mentioned, including you neutralize, you eliminate, or at least you attenuate any sign of anxiety, which sometimes turns to agony, Number 11, Margi'a umeshivat nefesh. Like it says, Shavat vaynafash. God himself rested. What is the result of God himself rested? It means that we rest. Our soul rests, calm. This is a result of the previous benefit. No anxiety. But Meshivat Nefesh is a renewal. You renew yourself. We already discussed the fact that Shabbat is a magnificent gift. Why? Because we have 6 days. 6 days are enough to put you on a habit. But here comes Shabbat, and he takes us out of the habit. If there was no Shabbat, Marina, if there was no Shabbat, we would be creatures of habit. Only instinct will control us. Because we will be in the habit of doing the same thing every day. Going to work, we know nothing else. But Shabbat comes to remind us who we are. 6 days we go to work. Shabbat you rest. And everybody agrees that Shabbat has a lot to do with God. So it gives us the awareness of our obligations towards God. If there was no Shabbat, we would fall into the habit and we become creatures of habit. Creatures of habit have no share in the world to come, will not have eternal life, because people of habit are considered to be like animals. And animals, they live by instinct. They don't have intelligence and they don't have free will. But Shabbat comes and it rescues us from falling into the habit, and it wakes us, it gives us awareness. On Shabbat you know that you are different. On Shabbat you know you cannot do this, you cannot do that. On Shabbat you know that it's different than any other day. That is enough to give us awareness, to put us on the same line with people of free will. Those are the people who will merit eternal life and Olam Haba and paradise. Gift number 12 is Notenet Chayim. It gives us life. Of course, what is the life that it will give us? I'm sure many of us know that the concept of Neshama Yetera. That's a statement brought in the Talmud in Masechet Betzah on page 15, where it says that when Shabbat comes, we have a second soul. Neshama Yetera, the extra soul. I'm sure you heard about this. The extra soul, you know what it gives us? If you talk about physical things, it does give us also. Let's say, for example, when you eat. The food tastes on Shabbat better than any other day. You don't believe me? You would believe the story that I told you about Antoninus, the emperor, with Rabbeinu HaKadosh, when he came in the middle of the week, remember? And he gave him the food of Shabbat, and he said, that's not the same thing. He said, of course, Shabbat is a special spice. I cannot get it to you except on Shabbat, he said to him. So Shabbat, the taste, To'ameha hayim zachu. When you taste the food of Shabbat, don't tell me it's the same food. Even though you eat only potatoes, it's still much superior than all the other days. But that's one little detail about the additional soul that we get. All the feelings that we have discussed before, the light that you see, the feeling that you see on Shabbat, it has to do with the extra soul that we receive. I could talk much more about this, but I know that I have to conclude. Let me conclude with the last gift of Shabbat. Osher uparnasa tova. And that is, when you keep Shabbat properly, you are assured of good parnasa, and it might even become riches. Our sages said, how come the Babylonians were rich? Because they kept Shabbat. If you keep Shabbat properly, you have the potential. That doesn't mean you become rich, but you have the potential to become rich. And it gives you parnasa tova. Let me just conclude the night by quoting a little story from the Talmud. Little story. A nice story. Did you hear about Yosef Mokir Shabbat? There was a gentleman by the name Yosef who was given a title, Yosef, the one who respected Shabbat. That's a story brought in the Talmud in Masechet Shabbat on page 119, Kofutet. Yosef Mokir, who was this Yosef Mokir Shabbat? There was a gentleman, a poor guy. Not so poor, but he had a neighbor. The neighbor was a goy. And that goy has plenty of riches. One day, the astrologers came to that goy, the neighbor of Rabbi Yosef. And they said to him, we saw in the stars that you have a neighbor who is Jewish. His name is Yosef. And one day he's going to take all your monies. Talmud tells us, wow, the goy believed very much in astrology. So he believed them. So what did he do? How is he going to save his money and his properties? The Talmud says he went and he sold all his money. He sold all his properties, all his fields, houses, everything. And he went and he bought a big, let's say a 15 karat diamond. 15 karat is enough? Maybe more. 50? Come on, Reuven. Anyway, maybe. So the guy said, by selling all my properties, I'm going to have one diamond. That diamond will, I'm still very rich, but at least I'll be able to take control of my riches, and the Jew will not take my riches. All right. What did he do? He took the diamond and he put it under his hat. You know, they used to have, how do you call that, mitznefet, the turban. And they used to, so he put the diamond inside the turban and he says, that's it. How can he take my properties? And then one day he went on a boat. And God sent the wind. And he was standing on the boat, and the wind came, and the turban flew with its diamond. The Talmud tells us, Baharuach v'ipila et kova'o layam, and the fish came and swallowed the diamond. All right. That fish ended up to be caught by whom? By the fisherman. When the fisherman brought the fish with all the fish that he caught, he brought them on Erev Shabbat, on Friday. To whom does he? Where does he go to sell his fish? To the Jews, because he knows that the Jews will buy good fish on Erev Shabbat. Especially if you have a very beautiful fish, only the Jew will buy it lichvot Shabbat. Yeah? Am I correct or not? That's what he did. He says, no non-Jew will take it from me at this hour, Friday afternoon. Only a Jew. So they said to him, even Jews will not, because it's so late. However, there is one Jew who respects so much his Shabbat. His name is Yosef. Even though he doesn't have money, but he'll buy your fish. If it is a beautiful fish, he'll buy it. Just in honor of Shabbat. And the guy came, and Yosef saw the fish. How much do you sell it? $50. And said, here is $50. Give me the fish. That's beautiful fish. That's worthy of Shabbat. And he took it and he opened the fish, and lo and behold, he saw the diamond, and he became a multi-millionaire in one shot. And that's Mechara, and he sold it for 13 talents of gold. And you see, so there was an old man there who said to him, Yosef, you see, Mishmal vele Shabbat, Shabbat pora'at lo. The one who borrows for Shabbat like you do always, Shabbat pays for him, and he became rich. So that's one story that tells us about Shabbat being a provider of Parnasat Tova. There's other stories and other things, but with this we conclude this lecture regarding Shabbat, Shabbat of many lights. Have a beautiful week, Be'ezrat Hashem, and Shabbat Shalom from now. It's still too early.